Welcome to the magical world of 1031 exchanges. It is a super interesting topic. I'm sure you've been or will be riveted. And because you love paying taxes, you should not listen to this video, because this video is about how you can delay paying capital gains tax by doing a 1031 exchange.
To Kauai.
Life is short. Buy the beach house, live the dream. A 1031 exchange is named after Section 1031 in the U.S. Internal Revenue Tax Code. It's an exchange of like kind, right? One investment property to another investment property, a business for another business, a way to sell one investment asset and purchase another one while you delay your capital gain tax, so you can use that money towards buying a larger investment. I forgot to pull up the blinds. Give me just a second. Hola. When you're doing a 1031 exchange, it does not include an asset or a property that's for personal use, right? Generally does not apply to your primary residence or a vacation home that is not a rental. How do you do a 1031 exchange? Now, there are very specific timelines and guidelines that you have to go through. If you'd like to review this, you can log on to the irs.gov website and look at the rules and details in publication 544. Before you get to that, let me give you the basics so you'll have an understanding of what you need to do to perform a 1031 exchange. Number one, you need to identify a property. Remember, these are like-kind properties. They don't have to be exactly the same, but you need an asset that is held as an investment. It can be a business, it can be a condo, it could be a home, right? But something that's held strictly as an investment. So that's going to be the property that you're going to sell or exchange for a new property. Number two, you need to identify the property you want to purchase. Now remember, these properties need to be like kind. They need to be similar. Now they don't need to be exactly the same. You don't need to sell a one-bedroom condo and buy a one-bedroom condo. You could do a house to a condo to a house. You could do a piece of land that was purchased for investment purposes into an apartment building, right? But it has to be like kind, and it has to be an investment property. The third thing you're going to need to do is to choose a qualified intermediary. What is a qualified intermediary? This is a person, not your real estate agent, not your banker, who is going to hold the funds and walk you through the process to make sure you don't miss any timelines or any steps. Because if you do miss any, you'll end up paying your capital gains tax now instead of deferring them and paying them later. Sometimes a qualified intermediary is called an exchange facilitator. There are other names for it, but it's someone who works as a 1031 exchange professional. They're going to work closely with your title company and with you to make sure no steps are missed. If your qualified intermediary or your 1031 exchange facilitator doesn't do their job, they won't be held accountable by the IRS. You will. So choose carefully. Step 4 is to decide how much of your proceeds are going to go towards purchasing the exchange property. Now, you don't have to use all the proceeds towards the exchange property. Any proceeds that you don't use will be taxed at a normal tax rate, right? It's the ones that you do use to purchase the exchange property that will receive the tax deferred 1031 exchange benefits. Step 5 is for you. You need to keep an eye on the calendar. Now, you've picked a great 1031 exchange facilitator. Remember, it's ultimately up to you. So you want to keep an eye on the calendar so you know the dates and you know when things have to be performed. The first date you need to be aware of is after the sale of your property. You have 45 days to identify the replacement property. You want to make sure the real estate agent that you're working with knows your time frame with the 45 days, when you identify that property, you need to do it in writing, and you need to share that you're doing it both with the seller and with your 1031 exchange facilitator. The second part of the timeline you need to keep your eye on is the close, right? So you've identified your property. How much time do you have to close? So you have 180 days to close. Now it's not 180 days from identifying it. It's 180 days from the sale of the first investment property, or after your tax return is due, whichever time frame is shorter. 45 days to identify, 180 days to close. Sometimes people are hesitant to do 1031 exchanges because there is a specific timeline that you have to abide by. There's a lot of ways that people legally work with this. Sometimes they'll identify the property they want to sell, and when they receive an offer on it, they negotiate with the buyer to have more of a flexible closing date. Once it closes, you have 45 days. Step number 6 is to be careful with your money. The whole idea of a 1031 exchange is to be able to use all of the funds from one investment towards another one, which is why the IRS allows for this tax deferment. To do that, you can't touch the funds at all. When the first property sells, the title company should take those funds and send them to your 1031 exchange facilitator. They should not go to you. If they go to you, you're going to have problems with the IRS. Send them to the 1031 exchange facilitator. You shouldn't touch them at all. So step 7 is you tell the IRS what you're doing. You're going to fill out IRS tax form 8824. Describe the property that you sold, the property that you purchased, and the timeline that you did it in, and who handled the money, who was your exchange facilitator, and document that the money did not go to you. Here are some really important things to know about a 1031 exchange. You will still pay taxes. This is a way to defer paying taxes. Now you can do multiple 1031 exchanges, right? You can exchange from one property to another, at least right now that's allowed. But eventually the property will be sold and you will pay your taxes. There are 3 types of 1031 exchanges that people do. One is a simultaneous exchange. You sell and buy a property on the same day. There's a lot of ways to accomplish that, right? But if you sell and buy on the same day, you still qualify. You don't need to sell, take 45 days to identify, and take 180 days to exchange. Another type of 1031 exchange is the deferred 1031 exchange. And this is a typical 1031 exchange, right? It's where you sell a property, identify in 45 days or less, and close in 180 days or less. The third type of exchange is a reverse exchange. This doesn't work for everyone because a lot of people need the funds from the first property to purchase the second property. If that's not the case for you, this is a huge benefit for you. In a reverse exchange, you can buy the property that you want to buy and then later sell the first properties in exchange out of it. Now, when you do a reverse exchange, sometimes this means that there's an exchange accommodator who actually holds the title of the exchange property for you. You still need to buy by the 180 days. You'd buy your exchange property first. You have 180 days to then sell the investment property whose funds you're going to use. With a reverse 1031 exchange, the rules are complex. Make sure you identify and speak to a tax consultant before doing it. Now, they do happen all the time, so don't be afraid to do them, but make sure you speak to a tax consultant. My last client that did a 1031 exchange owned a piece of property in California that had a business on it. And he had leased the business out for years. And that business owner approached him to buy the dirt, to buy the land, right? So he decided to do a 1031 exchange. Now, it was a large purchase, so he decided he was going to use about half of those proceeds toward the purchase of a new investment property, and he was going to do something else with the other half. He was able to sell his property, identify replacement properties in 45 days, and close in 180. It's super happy that he was able to do that. He was able to defer those taxes and use more of the proceeds in the purchase of his new investment. You're using a 1031 exchange not just to delay taxes, but also to grow your investments.